All right, so we are live now, and today we have with us Brinda. Brinda is doing her bachelor's in botany, chemistry, and biotechnology from Christ University, and she's currently in her second year of bachelor's and is moving on to her third year. And Brinda has been here for nearly a month now for her internship. So, Brinda, can you tell me what brings you here? Why Green Yatra?
Hi. Yeah, I have always been very interested in the environment, and I got into biotechnology because I had a particular interest in research related to the environment. But I wanted to understand what kind of action is being taken on the ground when it comes to this, when it comes to restoration, when it comes to handling the crisis situation, I would say, that we are in now. So that is why to get a learning experience to understand, I came to do it.
That is very interesting. So, dear audience, today Brinda will be sharing with us her experiences and her learning. So, I really hope that you enjoy this session. All right, Brinda. So, take us through what you have learned.
I had three major projects in Green Yatra. The first one was policy analysis. I went through all the resolutions of the COP from the 1st to the 21st to understand what kind of decisions are being taken about the environment. The COP is a conference of party that is handled by the UN. It is decision-making body and they meet once a year and they have been since 1995. The COP has it started in Berlin and made multiple interesting plans such as the Paris Agreement, the Bali Action Plan, the Kyoto Protocol. They create funds to deal with adaptation, loss, mitigation, to with innovation about action taken in environment. They review the IPCC reports and see where we stand today. They establish consequences to if we fail in living up to timelines and such. Discuss the dangers of climate change. Plan for transfer of technology to less developing countries so that they can handle the kind of the amount of work that needs to be done when it comes to working with the environment and to keep pace with the developed countries and to limit and reduce the greenhouse gases so that we do not cross the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold of pre-industrial level temperature, so that we don't go into a situation where where the damage caused by climate change is unmanageable. Unfortunately, there seems to be a major difference between the kind of vision that they've had and the action that we have had on the ground. And this has majorly come because they have a tendency of debating on the language, like defining words like adaptation. They're having fights on inclusion of certain language like flexibility. They have the first time there was a shift towards implementation was in COP27, that is in 2022, that being last year. All the funds that they had pledged to the developing countries comes in form of excusing the debt rather in form of usable money. As such, there is really no money that these developing nations can use to create frameworks, to create plans, to implement anything. So as of now, to reduce the temperature to be at a point where we can still salvage the environment, the global emissions have to reduce by around 43%. And for the reduction in the emissions to start, there needs the emissions of each country needs to reach a peak point and then to start reducing. However, these emissions are still growing constantly and reached the highest level ever recorded in 2022 of 58 gigatons and does not seem to stop. We can understand how Herculean this task is of reducing emissions by 43%, since during the lockdown, during COVID-19, the emissions reduced only by 7%. When all the people were stopped in their homes, where travel stopped, transport stopped, all of that led to only a 7% decrease in emissions, and that was the lowest emissions have ever decreased since the Second World War. The scientists have said that in the next 5 years, we are at a point where we will easily cross the 1.5 threshold. And this is really bad news for the environment because the changes in currents and the air movements and all of that, will become permanent after that. And it will become hard to create, to go back to a level where we can handle the environment. one way to deal with the environment, to deal with the emissions, is to increase the green cover. And actually, the green cover has increased since 2000. It has increased by 5%. This would seem like good news, considering that this is not necessarily actively increased because of our actions, but it is increased automatically because of the increase of carbon dioxide. But this increase in the green cover has been in the Arctic region and the Boreal region. We rely on the Arctic region and the Boreal region to stabilize the temperatures around the world. The permafrost in the Arctic region is extremely important. The ice being white in color is extremely important because it reflects the heat instead of absorbing heat. The fact that these regions have become green is not good news, because a change of just simply the color means that the Arctic region can is now absorbing more heat than it can handle, which is causing melting of glaciers, which have been there for thousands of years, not only releasing a host of unfortunate viruses and bacteria into the environment, but also increasing the water globally, which means that the coastal regions get taken over and get washed away. In India in itself, there has been an increase in green cover, a huge increase in green cover, in fact. However, the carbon stock has decreased. This is because the increase in green cover has not been of dense green cover. And for any carbon sequestration, that is absorption of carbon dioxide from the environment, for any successful carbon sequestration to take place, the green cover needs to be dense. The trees needs to be close together. They need to be of a particular age. And between 2015 and 18, India has lost dense forests of the size of Kolkata within just 4 years, which is not good news. It means that we have to put in a lot of work actively in form of from the government's part of view, from NGOs, from organizations, to replant trees and to make sure that the existing forests are saved, are protected.
Yeah, this is very true. In fact, I was just wondering, would you know why? Like, why is there an increase in the boreal and Arctic region green cover? Like, ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? That is so strange. I mean, there is just ice there. So,
So the thing is that since ice is melting, there is more and more of the land that is started to being exposed. One. Second
mm,
is carbon dioxide ends up accumulating there because one, it's a cold region, the carbon dioxide is closer to the ground, and there is not much competition. The cover that is increasing there, they don't have to compete with existing trees. So there is more and more land, there's more and more area on the Arctic region. The amount of algae is increasing, and all of that is increasing, and it is not dense enough to reduce the carbon dioxide, but it is creating a very nice environment for plants to grow with it.
okay, that is interesting.
So my second project was with the Green Dictionary. After going through all the UN reports and the documents, I came to an understanding that there is a huge focus on language when it comes to environment. And more often than not, people who are not involved in this sector do not really understand what this language means. They have a relatively they don't have a deep understanding of what this word means, what the technicality means, where the scope of the language ends. So I created this tool, a communication and education tool called the Green Dictionary, where we start compiling words, which about restoration activities, words that are used in official reports such as carbon stock, carbon footprint, desertification, acronyms, words that are used in products used to appeal to the environmentally conscious consumer base, words that are used in news articles. For example, in Green Yatra, they have been using this technique called Miyawaki forest plantation, which is a very scientifically based technique where they rely on the positive interaction between plants to increase its growth. And it is a very eco-friendly and very natural and very healthy way for the plants to grow, but to create this dense forest, because like I mentioned before, there is a need for dense green cover rather than random unplanned afforestation drives. It needs to be scientific and of this kind of nature. So I wanted to create this pool of words that are used in the environmental forum, which could be shared with school students, which could be shared with people who commonly access articles about the environment, who want to learn about the environment, who want to be fully aware of what information that they are getting and what is the scope of the information and what information means actually in real life on the ground. So I created this idea that we could create this dictionary which has this kind of pool of words.
This is such a nice thing, because when I think back, actually there are a lot of these terms that I myself learned after being in the environmental sector, and that too after being being in conversation with people who use it, and then I'm like, what is this word, like CSR, like ESDs. I actually ESGs. Sorry, I actually did not know the meaning of all of these things. So I think this is a very great tool that you are thinking on creating, and I am very sure this will definitely actually help a lot of people, because so many of these terms are so intertwined, and they're so easily confusable with a lot of other things. So
Yeah.
this is
Absolutely.
really nice.
In fact, one very interesting thing that I noticed is one would think that green infrastructure and green building would mean the same thing because they're both
Correct.
about buildings. But actually, green building and green infrastructure are in two very different directions. Green infrastructure are infrastructures which can store rainwater, whereas green buildings are also because there has been an eco-friendly approach and a sustainable approach from the entire building process. So
Oh,
like this
I
was a big
wow.
experience for me as well when I went through all of these words that I went through. To know that these have very technical and a very defined, sorry, a very I would say concise definition. They do not mean a very vague understanding of things. So I hope that other people also could come to that kind of an understanding.
I am very sure they definitely, because I myself did not know the difference between these two, infrastructure and green buildings. So yeah, this is something very interesting for the generations to come, who are now, this thing getting more interesting and important.
Yeah, yeah. And after this, my third project was more of a research based project. It was the ability of carbon mangroves to sequester carbon. So I went through 16 native species of Maharashtra and what their biomass is and what the carbon stock is. Because as I had mentioned before about the green cover and the density, mangroves are this one unique ecosystem which have an ability to absorb a great deal of carbon, but they do not equally release the carbon in the air equally fast. Other ecosystems like tropical rainforests and such, they can absorb a huge amount of carbon at a very fast rate, but because of the decomposition over there, they also release this carbon with the air very fast. So this carbon ends up being a very this carbon dioxide sequestration becomes a very surface level thing. There is no stability over there. However, I found out that because of this unique position that mangroves are in, where they are partly in water, partly in soil, where they are constantly being exposed to tides, being exposed to silt, and because of the water that they are in, the carbon that they bring into the soil do not get decomposed very fast. In fact, it stays in the soil and gets absorbed into the soil at a much slower process, making mangroves this carbon sink where they do not release carbon equally fast. And so, restoration of mangroves could be a very useful way of making sure that our emissions are in control and that our emissions are going back into the soil as it should have. Mangrove forests inhabit around 0.5 of the global coastal area. However, the CO2 equivalent that they absorb of 21.9 gigatons is equivalent to 51 billion barrels of oil. The amount of carbon that have been released by burning these 51 billion barrels of oil, that is the amount that they sequester. And even if we just restore the amount of mangroves that have been lost, it would the reduction would be equivalent to getting out of the equation around 3 billion barrels of oil, or the fossil fuel consumption of Australia for around 3 years. So I feel that as of now, our approach towards protecting the environment and restoring needs to be very scientific in nature. It cannot be random and unplanned and just thinking any green is good green and things like that. It needs to be a very directed process. As such, I feel mangroves are an extremely good place to focus on, and Green Yatra as an organization is doing it right now, focusing on restoration of mangroves to make sure that there is actually a difference in the environment once the job is done.
This is some very interesting findings because even if you go to see in the mainstream education system, mangroves, grasslands, these kind of ecosystems are completely sidelined because it's like forests are everything and water is everything. And actually, if you think about it, mangrove as an ecosystem is very important, not just from the carbon aspect, but even from the biodiversity aspect, even from the aspect of protecting cities, and from all of these floodings and all of that. This kind of research is actually going to be so much more helpful for people to understand the importance of these ecosystems that are sidelined but are actually very important. This is some very interesting findings, Brinda. This is a very good
Yeah.
job.
Thank you. So it was a wonderful learning experience at Green Yatra. I had come with my head full of science. I'm very used to the labs because of the kind of background that I have, but I really wanted to know when techniques are being implemented on the ground and things like that. What is something that can make a difference? And so, just simply to learn that, I came to Green Yatra because of the kind of work that they have done and the kind of science that is going into the work. And I had such a wonderful understanding and learning experience, and how to do directed research which can actually be implemented on the ground, and how to understand what policies are, what it means for the people. And the media, they keep giving us information and different kinds of news, how to actually understand what it means for us instead of getting caught up in buzzwords and things like that. And I'm very thankful for this experience over here.
It was also our pleasure to have you around here with us, Brinda, because the amount of work that you have put in, the kind of studying and the kind of detailed and research that you have done, this is definitely going to be so useful because, like you said, we are now venturing into the whole mangrove sector, and this is the kind of background information that will actually be required in order to
Yeah.
implement projects better. So yes, exactly. So I am really hoping that once the mangrove project takes off, we will probably hopefully have you back here so we can have you you know help us a little more and learn more about this whole.
Yeah,
uh,
I would love that.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Brinda. This was a great session. This was a very great learning experience for both us, and hopefully for you too. And really hoping that this kind of an exposure can help you understand more about the importance of environment and help you spread it across to everyone else. Thank you so much.
Yes, it has been wonderful talking to you, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh,